Let's start with what Tiger Woods actually said, because the context makes this so much more significant than it might initially seem. During a recent TGL match where his Jupiter Links Golf Club team faced Rory McIlroy's Boston Common, Tiger was sidelined due to ongoing recovery from his Achilles injury and back issues. Watching from the bench as his team battled Rory's squad in an intense overtime finish, Tiger did something he's almost never done publicly. He gave Rory a nickname that immediately went viral across every golf platform. He called him the Intimidator. Now that might not sound shocking on the surface, but think about who this is coming from. Tiger Woods, the most mentally dominant player in golf history, the man who built an entire career on intimidating opponents with his presence alone, just publicly acknowledged that another player has that same quality. That's not a casual compliment. That's Tiger recognizing something in Rory that mirrors what made Tiger himself so dangerous for 2 decades. But what Tiger said next is what truly shocked the golf world and revealed a decision that nobody expected. According to multiple sources close to Tiger's family, he's been advising his son Charlie Woods to study Rory's swing mechanics rather than trying to replicate Tiger's iconic but physically demanding technique. Think about what that means for a second. Tiger Woods, whose swing is one of the most analyzed and copied in sports history, is telling his own son not to follow that path. That's a stunning acknowledgement of how golf has evolved and how Tiger's approach, while devastatingly effective, came with physical costs he doesn't want Charlie to pay. Tiger's reasoning is both practical and heartbreaking when you understand the full context. His swing generated enormous power and precision, but it also required torque and stress on his body that led to multiple back surgeries, knee procedures, and injuries that eventually limited his ability to compete at the highest level. Rory's swing, by contrast, is smooth, efficient, and sustainable. It generates similar power with less physical strain, which is exactly what Tiger wants for Charlie as he develops his game and prepares for a potential professional career. This decision reveals something profound about how Tiger views his own legacy and his son's future. He's not asking Charlie to be Tiger Woods 2.0. He's giving Charlie permission to find a more sustainable path to excellence, even if that means studying someone else's technique. That takes extraordinary self-awareness and maturity from someone whose competitive fire and belief in his own methods defined an entire era of golf. Now here's where Rory McIlroy's response becomes fascinating and shows a side of him that most fans don't see. When Rory was told about Tiger's comments and the advice Tiger has been giving Charlie, his reaction wasn't triumphant or boastful. Instead, Rory did something that reveals just how much pressure and expectation he carries even after completing the career Grand Slam and achieving everything the sport offers. Rory deflected the praise and immediately shifted focus to the responsibility he feels, knowing that young players, including Charlie Woods, might be looking to him as a technical model. In interviews following the TGL match where his team defeated Tiger's squad in overtime, Rory talked about how uncomfortable he is with the idea of being held up as the perfect example of anything, because he knows his own game still has flaws and inconsistencies he's constantly working to fix. That response shows something important about Rory's mindset. Despite winning 4 major championships, despite completing the career Grand Slam at Augusta in 2025, despite being one of the most successful players of his generation, Rory still doesn't see himself the way Tiger sees him. Tiger looks at Rory and sees the Intimidator, a player whose presence and ability can shake opponents. Rory looks at himself and sees someone still trying to live up to expectations and perfect a craft that might never feel fully mastered. The dynamic between these two players during the recent TGL match illustrated this perfectly. Tiger's Jupiter Links team was down significantly through most of the match, with win probability dropping to just over 2% at one point. But Tiger's teammates, including Tom Kim and Max Homa, staged a dramatic comeback that forced overtime. Throughout the entire match, cameras kept cutting to Tiger on the bench, and his expressions told a story of intense competitive frustration mixed with pride in how his team was battling. When Rory's team ultimately won in overtime, securing a 7-6 victory through clutch performances under pressure, the handshake between Tiger and Rory afterward lasted longer than typical post-match pleasantries. Multiple observers noted that Tiger said something to Rory that made him laugh and shake his head, a moment of genuine connection between two competitors who've spent years respecting each other's games while competing for the same legacy. What makes this entire situation so compelling is how it reveals the evolution of their relationship. When Rory first emerged as a superstar in the early 2000s, he was positioned as Tiger's heir apparent, the next player who could dominate golf the way Tiger had. That created pressure and comparison that Rory struggled with for years, especially as major championship victories became harder to secure and the weight of expectations grew heavier. But now, with Tiger's career winding down due to injuries and age, and Rory having finally completed the career Grand Slam, their dynamic has shifted into something more collaborative and mutually respectful. Tiger can acknowledge Rory's strengths without feeling threatened. Rory can accept Tiger's praise without feeling crushed by the comparison. And both can recognize that they're at different stages of careers that have been extraordinary in different ways. Tiger's decision to point Charlie toward Rory's swing mechanics rather than his own represents more than just technical advice. It's Tiger acknowledging that the next generation of players needs to learn from what worked about his era while avoiding the physical costs that came with it. And it's Tiger showing trust in Rory to be a worthy model for his son, which is about the highest compliment one competitor can give another. In Tiger's world, where competition has always been intensely personal and trust is earned through consistent excellence, telling Charlie to study Rory's game is an endorsement that carries enormous weight. Rory's response, choosing humility over celebration when told about Tiger's comments, shows that he understands the weight of being held up as an example. He knows that Charlie Woods faces impossible expectations as Tiger's son, and Rory doesn't want to add to that burden by positioning himself as some perfect standard that Charlie needs to meet. Instead, Rory's consistent message has been that every player needs to find their own path and their own relationship with the game. He's lived through the pressure of being compared to Tiger, and he wouldn't wish that exact experience on anyone, especially not Tiger's own son. The TGL match that brought all of this into focus was itself a perfect illustration of how both players approach competition. Tiger's team fought back from seemingly impossible odds, showing the never-quit mentality that defined his entire career. Even sitting on the bench, unable to play, Tiger's competitive presence was felt throughout the arena. His teammates fed off his energy and his belief that comebacks are always possible until the final shot is played. Rory's team held their composure under pressure and executed in overtime when everything was on the line, demonstrating the mental toughness that Tiger recognizes in calling him the Intimidator. Keegan Bradley and Wyndham Clark, Rory's teammates on Boston Common, played with confidence and precision when it mattered most. But it was Rory's leadership and clutch performance in the decisive moments that secured victory and validated everything Tiger has been saying about his ability to perform when stakes are highest. What we're witnessing is a passing of something important in professional golf. Not necessarily the torch of dominance, because Rory and Tiger's primes didn't overlap in ways that created direct head-to-head battles for supremacy, but rather a passing of respect, acknowledgement, and recognition that excellence comes in different forms, and that the next generation, including Charlie Woods, gets to learn from both of their examples. Charlie Woods, now 17 years old and committed to Florida State University, stands at a fascinating crossroads. He has the genetic gifts and early training from the greatest player ever. He has his father's advice to study modern techniques that prioritize longevity and sustainability. And he has the opportunity to forge his own identity rather than being crushed under the weight of impossible comparisons. Whether Charlie becomes a professional star or chooses a different path entirely, he's being given tools and wisdom that most young players never receive. Tiger Woods made a shocking decision by pointing his son toward Rory's swing, rather than his own. Rory McIlroy responded with humility that shows he understands the responsibility that comes with being viewed as a model. And together, these two moments reveal something beautiful about how the greatest players relate to each other when competition gives way to mutual respect and the shared goal of advancing the sport they both love. This isn't just golf news. This is a glimpse into how legends think about legacy, how they prepare the next generation, and how even the fiercest competitors can find common ground in wanting what's best for the game's future. The impossible weight Charlie's been carrying since before he could even spell his own name. Let's be honest about the reality Charlie Woods faces every single time he steps onto a golf course. He's not just another talented junior player trying to earn college scholarships and build a competitive resume. He's Tiger Woods' son, which means every swing gets compared to the greatest golfer of his generation. Every tournament result gets analyzed through the lens of whether he's living up to his father's legacy. Every shot is watched by people who aren't just rooting for him to succeed, but are actively waiting to see if he'll crack under pressure that no teenager should have to carry. The junior golf circuit is brutal enough on its own without that additional weight. These are tournaments where hundreds of talented kids are fighting for rankings, recognition, and pathways to elite college programs and professional careers. The competition is fierce, the pressure is constant, and the margin between success and failure is razor thin. Most junior players deal with that pressure alone or with supportive parents who understand the game but aren't global icons whose every achievement set impossible standards. Charlie doesn't have that luxury. He has a last name that opens every door and simultaneously makes every door harder to walk through. He has a father whose career accomplishments are so extraordinary that even matching a fraction of them would be considered disappointing by people who don't understand how rare greatness actually is. And he has a spotlight that's been on him since before he was old enough to understand what it meant. What happened at this junior invitational exposed all of that in ways that made people uncomfortable. Charlie was competing in a tournament where he was expected to contend, where his name alone drew media attention and spectators who wouldn't normally watch junior golf. The pressure was building from the moment he arrived, not because of how he was playing, but because of who everyone expected him to be. If you want to understand what happened next, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story reveals something profound about identity and choice. And then Charlie made a decision that nobody saw coming. Instead of grinding through the pressure, instead of forcing himself to meet everyone else's expectations, Charlie chose to step back. Not because he couldn't compete, not because his game wasn't ready, but because he recognized that the environment had become more about managing everyone else's expectations than about playing golf in a way that felt authentic to him. That choice shocked people because it contradicted the narrative everyone had built around Charlie Woods. The assumption has always been that Charlie would follow his father's path, that he'd embrace the pressure and thrive under it the way Tiger did, that carrying the Woods name meant accepting the burden without complaint and proving himself worthy through relentless competition. But what Charlie did was something arguably harder and more mature than just winning the tournament. He made a choice that prioritized his own mental health and authentic relationship with golf over meeting external expectations. He recognized that sometimes the bravest thing an athlete can do isn't pushing through regardless of cost, but acknowledging when the circumstances aren't serving their growth and choosing a different path. The immediate reaction was mixed and revealed a lot about how people view young athletes, especially those connected to legendary parents. Some praised Charlie for maturity beyond his years, for understanding that his worth isn't determined by junior tournament results, and that protecting his love for the game matters more than satisfying people he'll never meet. Others criticized the decision as soft or entitled, suggesting that champions push through discomfort and that stepping back represented a lack of competitive fire. But both reactions miss what's actually significant about this moment. Charlie Woods is a teenager trying to figure out who he is as a golfer and as a person, and he's doing it under scrutiny that would break most adults. The decision to step back wasn't about avoiding competition. It was about refusing to let other people's expectations dictate how he experiences golf and what success means to him. People who've worked with junior golfers and understand the psychological demands of elite youth sports saw something different in Charlie's choice. They saw a kid who's developing self-awareness and agency in an environment designed to strip both away. Junior golf at the highest levels can become about pleasing coaches, satisfying parents, impressing scouts, and meeting rankings targets until the actual joy of playing gets buried under all those external pressures. Charlie recognizing that dynamic and making a conscious choice to step away from it, even temporarily, suggests he's developing tools that will serve him far better long-term than any junior tournament victory ever could. Because the reality nobody wants to acknowledge is that most junior golf phenoms never make it professionally, not because they lack talent, but because they burn out mentally from years of pressure that started too young and never stopped. What makes Charlie's situation unique is that he doesn't need golf for financial security or opportunity. Tiger's success has ensured Charlie will have choices and options regardless of whether he ever plays professional golf. That freedom should theoretically make it easier for Charlie to play for the right reasons, but it also removes some of the external motivators that drive other junior players. When you're not chasing scholarships or trying to escape difficult circumstances through sports, the only reason to endure the pressure is because you genuinely love the competition. And that's what Charlie seems to be figuring out. Does he love golf enough to deal with everything that comes with being Tiger Woods' son? Does competitive golf bring him joy? Or has it become primarily about managing other people's expectations and defending a legacy he didn't create? Those are profound questions that most teenagers never have to answer.